Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Grayson. I'm the Deputy Manager for the New York City Accelerator, and want to welcome you here and thank you for joining us in today's session for multifamily market rate, getting LL97 done. We'll be recording the session today for future reference, today's goals are basically to provide real life examples on the ground, examples of how different buildings and portfolios are addressing LL97. We'll feature compliance pathways, prevalent ECMs that these buildings are implementing kind of across the board, looking at incentive programs that are being utilized and financing options. So today we're really fortunate to have a fabulous group of panelists, along with the New York City Accelerator account managers that are working with these buildings and property management firms. So I will start, I guess I'll do it in order from the end of the table. Our account management team is at the end of the table. We have Joseph Staluppi and Laura Sauer. And then our building presenters include Matt Cebula from Akam, Michael Fine, a board member from 224 East 60th, and John Skipper, director at First Service Energy. So Matt and John manage sizable portfolios, and Mike, a board member, will provide a perspective from the building level. So we're kind of looking at it from a number of different directions. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our account managers who are going to run the panel discussion. And we'll just dive right in. So thanks everybody again for joining us.
Sure. Let's start with Matt. Would you like to give a brief introduction and an overview of Akam Services?
Sure. Matt Cebula, I'm with Akam Associates. We're a third-party management company based in, for the most part, New York City. We do have properties in Westchester, Long Island. We also have a down in Florida. We manage a portfolio of over 450 buildings in New York City alone. So that's kind of a brief overview of what the company is. Primarily condo co-ops, market rate buildings, some rentals and commercial buildings as well.
Cool. So right now we are talking about Local 97 compliance. We work pretty closely together, going through all the different buildings within the portfolio and looking to create long-term sustainability plans based off of the specific needs and interests of that client. So what would you say is something worth noting about your collaboration with New York City Accelerator program, or services offerings, etc.?
Yeah, Joe, you and your team, the Accelerator, are a great resource and always a great reference to every board. You're a great starting point if you kind of want to get an idea of where your building is in terms of Local 97 compliance or any other energy-related compliance. The emails that you guys send out, I get a lot of them. I know board members who work with you directly are very detailed and provide you sort of a guide. Hey, this is where my building is today, and what is the next step you got to take, whether it's working with you guys or working with us, and a combination of putting a team together to kind of gauge what the outlook is on 97 and what is the best way for your building to come into compliance with what is required in the next 2 cycles.
Yeah, 100%. So for the most part, you're managing market rate co-ops and condos. I do want to note that there's a particular alternate Local 97 compliance pathway in which the building has between 1 or up to 35% rent-regulated units. You would actually get a 2-year delay on your Local 97 compliance with that first report due May 1st of 2027. So what are some of the conversations that you're having with your clients, getting them prepared for future reporting and filing tasks?
Sure. So what we start always is take a look at the data. So the benchmarking, which is submitted annually, no one really looked closely at the data previously because it had no financial repercussions. So talk to your management company or the benchmarking provider. Look at the data that's being submitted on an annual basis to the city every May 1st. scrutinize that data, make sure that your property metrics are correct in terms of, square footage, number of units that, translates to population density. All of that should be audited if you want to go as far as getting a professional measurement to make sure that the data is certified and ready for filings, which I think a lot of the engineers who are going to be signing off on these upcoming filings starting next year are going to require to have your property data professionally certified.
Excellent. Two final questions now kind of on project implementation as opposed to, actual collaboration with registered design professionals and filing. So in our personal collaboration, some of the common ECMs that I'm personally supporting with would include LED lighting for local ADA compliance, advanced boiler controls for HVAC optimization, window replacements, rooftop solar to be paired nicely with the roof replacement and insulation. And then some of the more aggressive scopes of work would include electrification, best prepared alongside a anticipated boiler failure. So what are the, aside from those, what would you say are really sticking out to your clients and any of the pros and cons that you're seeing with these measures?
Sure. So what you mentioned, a lot of it is really low hanging fruit. LED lighting. If you're running antiquated boiler controls, you got to bring someone in to kind of bring you into the 21st century. Whether it's, I'm going to reference a couple of vendors that I saw out there, Brunwise, Perry, those guys who can kind of, offer the monitoring services, take that off your superintendent's hands. Those are all great starting points, but when looking at it, different ECMs, you kind of also have to realize all of them come with a certain cost. So every board, what they look at is what is the impact and how quick is the payback on a particular measure. We have a couple of buildings who are going through a full boiler heating plant replacement or moving away from oil to either natural gas or, looking into electrification. We tell them to consider all approaches. A good approach that I know that Con Ed is currently pushing is the hybrid approach of electrifying domestic hot water. So we always mention that option to any board looking to upgrade the heating plan where, your boiler is at the end of its useful life cycle or well past it in some cases. Explore the different options. We can help you out, model out, to show you what the impact is going to be on your carbon fines, so if you use full gas or if you do the hybrid approach or the electrification factoring.
Totally. Big plug to starting out small, partial electrification, domestic hot water, take advantage of the beneficial electrification credit to really maximize your ability to deduct emissions away from the overall metric ton of CO2. So touch a little bit on the financing. There's utility incentives available, both through Con Ed and the National Grid. There's the Clean Heat Program, NY Sun. What is your experience working with the different vendors that are out there today and working in terms of administration and securing these incentives?
Yeah, I mean, incentives, the key to the incentives, obviously every board comes to us because they hear about these different programs resulting from the Inflation Reduction Act or stuff that the utility is doing. What I tell them, well, first of all, you need to have a project in place, right? Because if you're going to Con Ed, Nat Grid for an incentive, they need to do a pre-inspection and a post-inspection to kind of determine how much therms or kilowatt hours you guys are giving us back to give you the dollars for. So whether, it's a window replacement project, a roof replacement project, or heating controls, if you're a gas building, make sure that before you start the project, have Con Ed evaluate the work so that you can actually tap into the incentives. Once you do the work, there's no retroactively going back and applying for those incentives. I've worked with your team. I know that Andrew, I've been on a lot of calls with him about financing, probably more geared towards condos. Co-ops are a bit more tricky because usually if you're a co-op, you have an underlying mortgage. The holder of that mortgage has a lot of say in any additional debt that you're going to put on the property. I know he provides a lot of the incentives, a lot of the financing options that are out there. NYC, NYCERT are also good places to go. But like I said, it's all contingent on your project and what's available out there to you.
Excellent, you said. All right, let's go into real life case study here with one of the clients, Michael Fine, board president.
No, vice president. But we're all on our boards. We're all presidents. But titles help.
Yeah, totally. So, 224 East 60th Street. I'll just give general market rate condo, 94,371 square feet, built in 1965. Right now, based off of previous years of local 84 benchmarking data, it does appear as though your building is good to go, compliant until 2030, but obviously more work, low-hanging fruit, some long-term capital planning to think long-term towards long-term compliance. So first off, what was your experience collaborating with New York City Accelerator and providing that guidance?
So I'd heard the word accelerator from one of my colleagues on the board. We really didn't know a whole lot, but what we did know was 97 was coming, and we were told we were on a time limit. In terms of when we could get that accomplished, and it was a little bit unnerving because we heard about the fines, we heard about all the things that probably would make any board or owner nervous about with regard to energy. So when one of my colleagues mentioned this thing called the accelerator, I'm like, do you have a phone number? Like, no. Well, so I said, well, let me research it. And I made it 2 phone calls. One was to your office, who basically handled the calls, and the other was to you. We connected right away. It was very quick, easy process. What I found the best in terms of helping us was to, like Joseph noted, we actually have a little more time in terms of not being worried about the fines. What we didn't have was a firm handle. And again, we're a very hands-on board. We know all of us are extremely interested in what we're spending money on. And as much as we have a property management company that's charged to handling a lot of our stuff, we still kind of want to look over what's going on. So we really, given this 97 and one other factor, our steam run chiller. Do you guys have central air? Any of you have central air cooling? Sometimes they call them absorbers. It's in the basement. It's 60 years old and failing. Okay, pretty much every 3 weeks would say time to take a rest. So we had, so we had to we have to do something about that, and we thought it was a great opportunity to collaborate with this office and checking 2 boxes. One was to replace old infrastructure that was dying, and the other is to do it the way the rule makers are wanting us to do it. So it's been for us, it's a great expense that's coming, but it feels a lot better because we're not somebody that just did this 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and now we're, oh no, what are we going to do? We should have gone it from steam to electric instead of replacing with, some people have replaced with steam absorbers. It's an expensive process. But what the office did was we had like our initial energy consultant that interviewed with us. Listen, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news, but when somebody says you shouldn't expect another day from your cooling facility, okay, that's a really bad start to our meeting. So because we know that it's going to be over $1 million to replace the cooling tower and the absorber, and nobody really loved that meeting very much. So what Joseph did was we asked him, do you have other energy engineers who could inform us and give us a little more of an education as to what we have? And boy, did he had a list. We interviewed them all. I think there were 4. We interviewed them all, and every time we interviewed them, we learned something new, and we got smarter. So it's a great place to start. And it's never going to be a place to finish, because I think, as long as there are numbers, there's going to be local laws, right? So we'll get them for 98, 99, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a great contact. I recommend you definitely should reach out. I throw out there the government's making the rules. You really want to listen to what they're like and not waste your money on a product that's not going to be right for your local law 97. One of the things that we did was we put VFDs in, and that was on advice by energy engineers that the Accelerator connected us to. That was the thing that was notable about that is if you don't have a variable frequency drive, which is on that's what VFD stands for, is on your cooling tower. You basically are running fans 24/7 at full blast, and that's a tremendous amount of energy. It's the equivalent of running an incandescent bulb all the time instead of a fluorescent bulb. It's just a waste, but also there's other issues with that. But so what our consult you're going to be paying for a consultant. There's no getting around that. But a good consultant can pay for himself. This consultant that we had connected us with a supplier of VFDs installer that gave you a package wrap deal. You didn't have to, by that I mean, they installed, they provided the stuff and the equipment, and they actually handled the rebate. And because it's the paperwork, who has the time? Okay. And then you get one little thing wrong. Oh my God. It's like back to square one. So, and they were 5,000 less than the guy that wouldn't do the paperwork. So we interviewed all of those guys too. Again, you want to be, if you have the time or you want to make the time, you've got to have one or two people on point on your building at the top at the board. If otherwise, you know, you're going to be well served if you have a good property management company. They're going to do the best they can, but you're not going to know what you're paying for, and it actually is going to make you look really smart to the folks that you're representing at your building, that you know what's going on. You know, a lot of them have to stand up in the meeting and say, "Well, let's talk to that engineer, talk to this engineer." But when the board knows, it actually, I think, helps everybody, because we're all owners as well, and we're co-op owners. And it helps everybody in that room when you're having an annual meeting understand that we really care about what's going on if you have the time. Yeah, again, we understand not everybody is got the available time, but definitely put a couple of people on point handling LL97, because at a bare minimum, it'll be those folks that can educate the rest of you and boil it down to something that is digestible. For us, again, we feel kind of lucky. We're going to do a dual system, by the way. We're not going to be able to afford to do the heating right away, but we will be doing the air conditioning and moving away from steam to electric, and with a modular system, and getting an updated cooling tower so that's more efficient. But that said, we're going to keep the city steam for the heat and the hot water. I'd love to do the hot water. But one of the other things that this engineer did for us was he reached out to Con Ed to see if we had enough power coming into the building and to see what we could run and what we can't run. So as it turned out, we can run enough to do our air conditioning, but we can't run enough to do much more. So it's really important. And that guy, you know, that energy engineer will help you to know what your capacity is. There you go. Not important? You didn't? Okay. No problem. So anyway, you like that. That's okay. I wasn't saying anything that important anyway, so it's fine. All joking aside, probably a good break to give it back to Joseph.
No, you hit all the points. We'll have a formal Q&A after we go through all the panels. We just want to highlight a couple of things that I noticed when we first started to collaborate and what prompted next steps. You paired your discussions with these registered design professionals, engineers, with an upcoming local law 87 energy audit and retro commission due date end of this year. So perfect opportunity to double dip with these requirements and make the most of these requirements. So I thought that was pretty commendable. And second would be just a plug that the New York City Accelerator, we offer complimentary solar feasibility studies to determine what system size and type would be applicable for your building's rooftop, how much electricity you'd be able to generate and offset. And we immediately pursued this, quickly found that it would only offset 3% of usage. And you famously said the juice was not worth the squeeze.
That's right. You remember I said that. We got, oh my God, we were so excited to buy solar because we have a roof we can't even use because it's not, the certificate of occupancy doesn't allow for social gatherings, which is terrible. I have a feeling, whatever, there's nothing we can do about that. So we said, what a great opportunity. We could just take care of all our energy needs by sticking a few panels up there. So apparently you need a city of panels to feed our building, the amount of power that it would need to literally 5%. So it was not worth it. Plus we had a new roof. We put a new roof in a year ago. One of the things that you guys also think about, if I don't know how many projects you guys are in, but we've got a bunch going on. We got a local law 11 cycle 9, so we're going to be skinning our building. It's an interesting time for this building, but sadly, you want to get in and get surveys done before you do anything that might be insulation wise, because when you do, you actually could get some money back for things like roofs, things like skinning a building when you're putting new additional insulation in, and things like VFDs. I have a feeling, I just found out or was reminded that if we do a lot of this work by 2027, you get double the credit, double the carbon credit. Is that what it is?
Beneficial.
Beneficial, right. I need to quantify what that really means, but it dovetails also with yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You mind if I ask you the location of your building and how many units and what type of building?
Absolutely. It's a condominium. It's located across the street from Serendipity, 220 East 60th Street. It's a great ice cream place.
What district is it? Manhattan?
It's Manhattan, yes. 220 East 60th Street.
How old is your building?
It's 1965 was the build date.
How many units?
137. Yeah. Yeah. What about your building?
I mean, mine is in Queens, Flushing.
Okay.
That has about 105 units.
Okay.
It's about 60 years old. So I guess it's most likely over 50% of the New York City buildings are like that, pretty much all except Manhattan. The other world pretty much has a lot of buildings over 50, 60 years old and has old systems. And the way that I see is that it seems to be very much a lot of cram and difficulty trying to put that budgeted out for large expenses.
Yeah.
Because on top of what has been reason for the last 5 years that New York City has increased a lot of property tax, and on top of that, other energy costs, and now they're dumping on these the equipment costs to like upgrade that you need to do. However, I don't know. One of the things is that I believe that over 50% of the buildings has central heating system that is non-HVAC, whether using a gas or oil base. However, not that I know of that there's such a HVAC heating system that is centralized. I don't know. Otherwise, like, because New York City seems to be dumping us a lot of regulation for the last 10 years, dumping everything at one pretty much, and they want to finance without having very enough time to organize because it's very large.
Hey, it doesn't end.
It
doesn't end. I can tell you there's a lot of work that between building department stuff such as local law 11, where we're, masonry, a lot of structural stuff. It's expensive. And if you're in a brand new building, you're paying a lot of money per square foot. If you're in an old building, you're paying less money per square foot because the work is new and versus the work that's going to have to be done for a building that's old. I agree with you. It's expensive and financing it is hard. What you need to do is you need to go after the projects that are gonna yield you the greatest return. For example, our local law 11, we have a cavity wall system. And that means essentially we have a facade wall and an interior wall, and in between there's a gap. These were made gravity wall. Cavity wall. Did I say gravity? I said a cavity wall system. Cavity, did I say gravity wall? Sorry. I did say cavity wall. Okay, cavity wall system. Thank you. A cavity wall system. Ultimately, apparently we don't have the pins, the brick ties, enough brick ties in. It wasn't built right. And they were made of galvanized steel. So this facade is being held up by basically too few and rusting metal pieces holding it up. All right, it's like this. You walk by the building, it's moaning. Okay, so we have to skin the building or pin the building or do things to shore it up. That's a multi-million-dollar project, and we have to do that because if we don't, by 2027, the building will be considered unsafe, which makes the investment uninvestable. So we're going to take a few $1 million and we're going to fix that problem. Now, if you don't have the money, then there's going to be penalties. I get it. A lot of buildings don't have the money. And, who knows what's really going to happen with these fines when they finally happen, if they really happen or who knows what. But right now, for the buildings that have to do the work, or you have an antiquated system that you need to do the repair, I think this meeting is good for being able to use your resources to help you check the boxes of replacement, natural replacement from plant and equipment that is met its useful life, long outdated useful life, and the city and government requirements. That's what this is a good meeting to do, and these folks can do that for you brilliantly because they know the book. They wrote it.
I have a question. They factor in current price point for what your maintenance payments are now. How to absorb this additional cost based upon a city that's supposed to be keeping affordability for the middle class. But that's sort of out the window. You can't address all these local laws. And then also place these new regulations on, all of which are at a price point. Many people are saying, I can't pay more maintenance. The guy on the ground says, I don't care what you do. My maintenance cannot go up another penny for this month. But as a board, we have to go to them and say, local law 97 compliance is going to be a combination of some financing, but at the end of the day, it's going to cost you X in additional maintenance fees. Was your building able to absorb these costs without raising maintenance or condominium fees, your HOA fees?
So this is not a budgetary item where you would be raising common charges or maintenance. What you'd be doing is a capital call, an assessment.
Right.
And
Assessment.
well, it's different. One raises your cost, one raises your cost basis.
But there is an in cost to the person.
There is an in cost to the person, and well, yes and no. From an accounting standpoint, it's very different. But that said, and if you could speak to your board in building about the accounting differences, that might be helpful. But I would say to you this: the simplest thing is, if you've ever owned a house, the bad news is when you have to replace the boiler, there's only one person who's going to pay for it. Okay, but when you got to replace the roof, there's still only one person that's going to pay for it. But when you're in a city, the greatest city in probably the world, you're going to paying for it in the form of shared costs, which is different. If you own the building and you're a building owner, and just think about that guy or gal who owns the multifamily, they're paying for it out of their own pocket. They might have some tenants that are paying some rent, but that rent's going to go higher. Now, how do you keep the whole thing affordable? Look, we can't help two things. We can't stop time.
Right.
Okay. Unfortunately, I wish I could, because I don't want to get older. But we have to get old. The building I'm in, I bought 2 apartments 2 years ago, and then I find out, oh, we're raising $5 million. Why couldn't I have done that like a week afterwards? I might have gotten a better deal. There's timing. It's timing. It's part of home ownership and the kind of home ownership that we decide to enter into. Some of it is a surprise, but all of it in New York City is shared. Okay, and that's the only way you can't sell, you can sing it. Hey, we're raising your common charges. Hello, do you like how, there's no presenting that in a way that everyone's gonna say, thank you.
Right.
But-
But it was a special assessment.
Well,
The cost.
The thing yes,
Okay, that was my question.
yeah, the special assessment, but if capital assessment, that's the way to do it. One of the things that we're gonna try to do, because we have to do this local law work, is work with our contractors about better terms. Maybe they'll give you an extra year to pay them. Probably they will if they are awarded the job. But again, we're trying to dovetail, and you want to do this assessment over a period of time, not at one shot, so people can breathe. Do you know what I'm saying? And all of this has to play into
That's a good, we're gonna go off
Go
topic.
ahead.
We have one more
Sorry.
panelist. Excuse me, sir, we're gonna go, just be polite and cordial. We do have another representative here that I want to have a voice at this table. So I'm gonna turn it over to Laura Sauer and John Skipper with First Service Residential. We will have plenty of time after this to get into the nitty gritty. We all have business cards and we'll get into your building specific questions, but just need to make sure that we're equitable here.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to the Accelerator. Thanks to all of you for coming. John Skipper. I'm the Director of Energy Management at First Service Energy. First Service Energy is part of First Service Residential, which is the largest property management company in North America. We also happen to be the largest in New York. I think we have about 600 buildings. I hear different numbers every month, I guess.
It changes.
Yeah, it changes. First, we're a little different in that First Service Residential in New York has had an energy subsidiary, which is what I'm a part of, First Service Energy, for about 15 years. So when we think about Local Law 97, it's part of an evolution within the city, right? They didn't just wake up one day and say, let's, find buildings that exceed a certain level of carbon emissions. They started with, Local Law 84, benchmarking. Buildings have been having to do that for a while. I think the team over here talked about Local Law 87 and sort of the value of that's a requirement that every 10 years you do an audit and retro commissioning of your building. And I think the team was talking about marrying 87 with 97. If you have to do an audit on your building and the retro commissioning, that's a good time to also do a study. So one of the things I just wanted to bring up, and I'll talk a little bit more about my company, there is a really good incentive for studies, right? It's part of NYSERDA and it's called a Flex Tech program. There's a certain amount of work that needs to get done to qualify. However, many of the studies will qualify for that incentive. The incentive changes. I'm not sure what the story is for next year. It's been around for several years, and that's one of the things we've recommended that our buildings do is take advantage of the Flex Tech. It's covered in some cases 75%, half, but it's now 50. Would you know what it is for next year? Because we tell our buildings it changes every year. Take advantage of it while it's here. But one of the things to recognize is in most cases, you need a study to really figure out what does the board need to do moving forward. And now's, take advantage of we talked about incentives. The Flex Tech program offers half the cost of many of the studies. So that's one of the things to look at. Whoever you're looking at to do studies, ask them about that. Are they getting incentives? Because think about it, you can cover half the cost of a study through that program. So again, we started out with benchmarking. We do the benchmarking internally for our buildings, so we know year over year how much they're using. We provide an energy report card so that buildings can see what was my usage over the past few years. We list in there some of the common projects, and I think the list that was provided was a good one. We also work with Runwise and Parity to do controls. And just to mention something about both of those companies, and they do controls, projects where they're helping to reduce, in Runwise's case, they're helping to reduce heating costs. Parity can be a mix of heating and cooling reductions. But what's important there is Parity offers a guaranteed savings. So usually you get your money back over 3 or 4 years, but they guarantee you that they'll get 90% of what they project. So that's really helpful. And run-wise, typically you see a return of investment of 100% or better. And what that means is essentially you're getting your money back in the first year. And they have an app, so you go onto that app and you see every month. Now they're only saving on the heating. So during the heating season, you can see month over month, how much am I saving since I installed this system? Both of those companies also get the incentives. So that's also important. The team here mentioned, go through Con Ed, pre-inspection, make sure you're getting incentives. The other thing around incentives and working with contractors, put the burden on the contractors by making them take responsibility for the incentive. And what that means is if your project is 15,000 and the incentive is 5, tell them you'll pay them the 10,000, the net cost, and let them take responsibility for the incentive. That means you don't have to lay out as much money and you don't have the risk of dealing with Con Ed. I guess it's timely for me to say, I spent over 30 years working at Con Ed. So I have a lot of familiarity with Con Ed. And interestingly, before I left in 2017, I was on one of the teams that helped to manage the multifamily program. So I'm very familiar with projects that get incentives. In fact, at the start of the program, there were only 3 measures or projects you could do. The controls project we talked about, lighting upgrades, and then they had something called in-unit measures, which are actually free. And those were upgrading the lighting in the apartments, and also the shower heads, aerators and low flow shower heads. And they had a few other things, but that program was free. And I don't know if there's anybody here from Con Ed, but it's still free, right? So think about it. They'll put some stuff in the apartments, the lights, the shower heads, the aerators, and some other things for free. And I think one of the types of projects that doesn't get a lot of attention, a lot of the energy in a multifamily building is used in the apartments. So it's sometimes hard to get residents to focus on energy savings in their units. One of the things we do is, we have a lot of teams for service, but the marketing and communications team puts out a quarterly, newsletter for the board, and we talk about periodically what are some of the tips for residents to save energy. Putting in the smart thermostats. One interesting one I hadn't even thought of is, when you wash the clothes, if you wash with cold water, you can actually save on your heating costs. And if everybody does that, it adds up, right? So think about the free stuff that's available. We partner with the accelerator. We do some of the work on our own. At times we bring the accelerator in, so there's a partnership there. Sometimes we work together because buildings will reach out to them. And we have a lot of buildings, so I welcome the help. It's very hard to get to every building, and each building is at a different place in the, I call it the local law 97 evolution. There was a question over here. Yeah.
We're looking at run lines.
Yes.
And our boilers and the life cycle.
Okay.
So we have to upgrade the boiler, the hot water, whatever. I'm trying to convince the board to put run lines in after we upgrade, not to save 10 cents now on a broken down boiler.
Yeah.
To save dollars. What is your opinion on when to install?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We have over 100 buildings using Runwise. We really like their service, the technology, and the team. And the work that they do. Runwise. Yeah. So I would talk to them. My understanding is it's not a big cost to move their equipment, their infrastructure, I would call it, from the old boiler to the new. It's, I think, somewhere around $600-700. And then, so it really depends. If the book, if you would want it in for a heating season, so it probably makes sense to put it in, and then when you make the switch, just pay them find out exactly what the cost is, and find out how much you're going to save by putting it in now, and then run the difference on the numbers. You'll probably find it's better to just install and have them swap it out when you make the change of the. Yeah, but
So,
sure.
We've worked on 15 multifamily properties in New York City. We do turnkey, comprehensive building upgrades. Our sort of mission is to make these decarbonization profitable. And so we use a number of cost saving strategies like so. There's a very, very, very complex building in New York City. It's the buildings built like 1920s, 6 stories, rental, like a C building, right? And like 98% of them, it's the same situation. They got old boilers that have to be replaced.
How many units on that?
Well, they're usually 50 to 80 to 90. It's probably the biggest building class in all of New York City. They all have the same problem, the same issue. They need to replace their boilers. So, and the city is obviously pushing towards electrification. So you hear about electric heat pumps. That's the future. The issue, it kind of reminds me of solar like 5-10 years ago, where people were hesitant to invest in a system today because they knew a year from now it's going to be substantially improved. And I got to believe that with heat pumps, there's going to be a massive evolutionary step forward over the next couple of years with performance of heat pumps. So, this is a dilemma. This is, if you're talking to a building owner, you want to optimize the performance of the building. Do you recommend, even if you work with a company like Black Power, like 100% finance, even if it's financed 100%, do you recommend going with heat pumps today, or do you say, you know what, we recommend do the low-hanging fruit efficiency measures and wait a couple of years? What is your recommendation?
Go ahead. Sure.
I can give you an idea. We managed 400 buildings. In the last 2 years, we have 2 buildings that fully electrified, multi-million-dollar projects. And it's a dilemma that a lot of buildings are facing. So we generally tell the boards, let's look at every building's different, obviously. Not the buildings we manage, not the same. We don't manage 400 of Michael's buildings, obviously. Let's look at your data. Let's look at how if you're, no fines in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's see how we can improve the operations that's currently there. Obviously, if you're looking at a heating plant replacement, it's a bigger project. We got to put a team together, kind of figure out where you got to go. But I don't think we expect every building in New York City to show out $5 to $10 million to fully electrify, even if it's 80 or so units, right? It's a multi-million-dollar project. Let's look what's there. Let's tackle the low-hanging fruit, whether it's lighting, heating controls, which heating controls technically extend the lifespan of your boiler because you're not running your boiler at 100% when it's 70 degrees outside, and that's sometimes a typical New York City winter. So start slow, benchmark year to year, see what kind of impact you're making with the low-hanging fruit approach. And like you said, technology is going to take us there. 5 years ago, I don't think a lot of people knew what a heat pump was in New York City. Right? Local law wasn't a thing until 2019. So in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to make forward to technology and what's available to the buildings. I speak to the engineers that work with, whether it's Michael's engineer, Wallace, obviously, he keeps sending me these new things that are coming online that are getting approved for installation that are going to make a difference down the road. So focus on what you currently have there, see how much life you can get out of the boiler that's there. Obviously, if it's a critical failure, you gotta replace it. But that's when you talk to Joe's team, you talk to your property manager, you pull in comment, see what options you have. Maybe going full electric is not an option for you because there's not enough capacity there. So that's where I mentioned the sort of hybrid approach between domestic hot water and gas.
I'm gonna add to that. That's a very good point. So I'm the managing director of electricity. We do heat pumps, both space heating and water heating. And a lot of buildings get the saving and the payback to justify water heating heat pumps. Because as you said, typical boilers, the large boiler serving the whole building is also serving the water heating. And that doesn't make sense financially to run that boiler over the summer months and the shoulder months to just run the water heating. And that saving by itself justifies the domestic hot water heat pumps. So we also run that analysis and justify it with numbers. But as he said,
the numbers make sense for the partial.
So just do the heat, the hot water, domestic hot water as a heat pump.
As a heat pump
As a heat
first.
pump, and then
get
maybe
that
use
going.
Runwise to optimize the
Yeah, you
boiler
gotta, you gotta
performance.
realize that if you're a gas heated building, 80% of the emissions are your heat pump.
Yeah, I would just add to that, everything I've heard makes sense. Just the study piece, right? Because, and I guess the challenge is really how bad is your system? Because if it's gotta be replaced,
It's critical then.
but at least the study will, and some studies don't really get into the real cost. They'll give you, what's out there. But a study is really important to give you the numbers, to get you a better handle on what's going on. And then you price it out. Then you're in a position to make an educated decision based on, where you're at. And it is a difficult call, but the other thing to keep in mind is if you don't go to electrification, how much fines are you avoiding as part of the equation? So part of it depends on how much are you projected to pay in fines if you go one direction, and what's the cost of doing it as well. So it becomes, financial analysis and decision the boards have to figure out.
We have the similar situation, actually, it's a FS residential building. We finalized already the year flex tech. We tried to do a low carbon study. And we are considering replacing the boilers, the steam boiler. It turned out that they didn't have the money for that. Now we are talking about a geothermal in the existing building. This is something totally new. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. We couldn't even dream about building geothermal in New York City.
Are you in Manhattan?
Now we talk in Manhattan. This building is 74th Street, and we are getting priced by a vendor. Well, it's not confirmed yet. It's a possibility. We're going to replace one of the boilers in a cogeneration with a geothermal heat pump. And we are trying to apply for the NYC has a new program, the heat recovery program. $12 billion. They pay 80% of the assessment, 60% of the design, and if they select a project, they pay for the full installation. So there's a lot of there's very interesting questions. Because we went through this early May in the site because we're trying to propose.
What's the building again?
Hampton House.
Yes.
That's my view. That's my view.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. 5 years ago or so, no one thought about heat pumps. Now we're talking about like,
Yeah, geothermal is
I've
good. Nobody
heard
was talking about
you
that like
mentioned
2
like
years ago.
there's studies that they're doing on recovering heat from
Yeah,
subway systems. That's
yeah.
another
That's new.
way
So
to go about it. It's
geothermal.
all new and it's all
Yeah.
stuff that we didn't hear about 4 or 5 years.
I have a question to staff of the apartment building.
Well, that's why you have.
Because of the fact that except the Manhattan borough, the other 4 boroughs mostly is, as I mentioned before, that over 56 years old. Couldn't the apartment building set a different standard for Manhattan and the other 4 boroughs? Because for the allow older building versus a building that is built within 20 years, there's very different number of limit of upgrades or limitation of able to upgrade it to the older buildings than the new buildings being built in Manhattan.
Yeah, I can't speak for the city. I worked at Con Ed.
Yeah, I mean,
When I was there, I didn't speak for Con Ed. I know it's a frustrating law.
Yeah, because it's
But
pretty much the same standard for new buildings versus older buildings doesn't have really make sense.
I think the consensus is that you can't bank on the city making changes. I know there was a lawsuit by a group out in Queens, but that lawsuit was really to extend, I believe, the time for them to, do work. But I think there's a consensus that 97 is here and we have to deal with it. And we can't, bank on changes being made in the future.
I have a question about the actual transition from the older buildings. Ours was built in 39. And we understand that with a heat pump, you have to have 2 pipes that go up and down rather than the one like we have for the steam boiler and radiators. So we have a building where all units are sold. We all live there. We cannot you know, everybody, tear down their walls. It's just an impossible
There are ways.
situation.
Well, ways, so that's
Oh,
what
tell
we
me,
do.
tell me.
So there are package units, there are ways to use the same riser to run new lines. There are ways to use hallways to run new lines. We're doing this in a 120 unit building, multifamily in Village Village. And we're using hallway drop ceiling to run the new lines and enter through the doorways. And they're creating ways to go around this. There are package units that don't have lights. It's just ones like your window is.
Did you do a study? Did you have a study done on options? Because when you do a study, we looked at providing several options, right? There were 3 parts to the studies. We worked with Stephen Manager of Associates, you know, and got the Flex Tech money to do a lot of studies. But there was one part was called the baseline, and that was what we talked about, keeping the existing system and optimizing it, making it as efficient as possible. And then there were usually 2 electrification options, which were some form of heat pumps. But to your point, not every building can do it. So that's where I think the study is so important. They'll look at your building, look at the options, and provide at least some of the options.
Yeah, what I also suggest, like you said, if you can start with a study if the building is on the 87 umbrella and you need to do it, start with that. But also talk to, if you know boards that are considering or you need recommendations for vendors. I saw the guys from Ecosystems out there today. They're one of the vendors that actually work on electrified buildings. There's no easier way around it. It's a major capital project, involves redoing a lot of infrastructure in the building. Like a lot of people, when they think electrification, they think, great, but you got to put these new fancy ACs in, some units on the roof. There's a lot of work that goes into it. You running new conduit, running new supply and, you know, return lines to every single apartment. So it's a major project. We're talking millions of dollars.
And can the older roofs sustain that kind of
That
weight on the
all of
top?
that has to be factored
And they
into
can,
it.
they do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a major project that takes a lot of planning. This isn't something that's going to happen in a couple of months. We're talking
Right.
years
Years.
in order to get the work complete.
Can I make thank you. I'm hearing a lot of amazing things here about and with this group that's here, the brain pan capacity that's in this room is amazing. My question is, has anybody thought about how changing, instead of doing all these projects of replacing pipes and of changing the power source from AC to DC, how that would be so much cheaper to be able to electrify the heat pumps, kitchens, the lights, and is that something that has been thought that's that's a possibility?
These are questions I would turn to the accelerator person. That's why we have that.
Well,
They have
the reason
vast knowledge on.
Well, see, the reason I'm mentioning this is that because the way that the DC would be implemented is so much cheaper to be able to electrify all these and they can be individual units. The unit doesn't have to go on the roof, doesn't weigh a lot. You're talking about a box that can go inside of a closet. If it's a building, one of the companies that I'm dealing with does DC. They have luxury hotels. They have quite a few. Connecticut, one in Fort Worth, the Sinclair Hotel. I was amazed that I went into this hotel, 178 luxury rooms, 5 restaurants, rooftop bar. The entire building was electrified, straight DC with 1 server rack that was in the basement, and that's it. And it reduced that cost to reinvent what has to happen, especially with L97. These are some of the factors that I think that we should be looking at, as well as not just the physical of replacement of these pipes, these heat pumps and so forth. Find the other way. To me, honestly, it's using the power the right way to your advantage and to the building's advantage, because it's going to reduce the cost of electricity consumption as well. Not only for the heat pump, but kitchens, the cooktops, everything, everything. The air conditioning, LG is working with this company that has developed an AC that works with a straight DC unit.
I'm sorry, what's DC?
See, like, we're getting into
We're
probably.
in
building-
AC world.
Yeah, we're getting probably into building code and everything else. that
Well,
goes into
we're
it.
working with NYC. They're excited about this because of the fact that they already came out and said, if it's gonna save our taxpayers money, our owners, we're going to change the code to be able to electrify
And that's kind of
with straight
going back to
DC.
the fact that there is going to be technology coming on year over year that's just going to make this process a lot easier.
Just want to follow up that you heard here. We had a problem also, the heat pump sometimes is a very costly solution. And when we did in the past for steam building, sounds like we had a steam building with one pipe, it was a hydronic conversion. It's not electrification, it's not full electrification. But you're getting away from the steam boiler, and you have hydronic pipe. And you can put it that way, a condensing boiler, or eventually you can put a hydronic air source boiler. So you cannot think about only heat pump or nothing. If it doesn't work for your site, there are options. I mean, from a one pipe steam going to a high efficiency condensing boiler, you use a big improvement.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have to unfortunately cut us short. We can continue if the other, we've got a class coming in. I'll take one more question and then we have to wrap up, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I got me. Well, I think I hear a lot of ideas, but if you have for this room 1,000 BTUs and you spend $1,000, whatever energy that you use, you're gonna spend exactly the most. So if you use gas, you know that it's cheaper. If you use electricity, it's gonna be more expensive. The bottom line right here is what your building should start doing. You skin it, that's what you call it. It's called cladding. If you clad it properly, you reduce the loads easily to 50 or 60%. Now your old system can still working without even changing that.
No, and that's a really good
The
point,
bottom
yeah.
line right here is reduction of the thermal load.
Mhm.
When you reduce the thermal loads, you're running in the right track.
It's not
So
a, yeah.
That is the
yeah.
bottom line on everything. The rest basically, one offer 75 of energy efficiency, other 95. This is minor, it's nothing. What is effective is the reduction of the thermal load. And that's you skinning your building. This is the right time to do it. This is the right time to do it. A lot of stuff. Look, these useless windows, look, they use the curtains because it's too much light. They waste the idea to put too much glass and thermal bridge, which is the metals. So you lose it. This is like a radiator to warm up the environment. This is the right time to do the right thing and to put in the right proportion the windows, because you don't need to do this size of the window. Look, right here it's covered.
To your point, we are insulating the building. So
if
we
this
are,
is
we
the
are,
thing,
we are
if
putting
they
in,
do that,
we are putting insulation.
they're gonna
We are
reduce the
reducing the load.
load.
But by the way, the building department already knows what you know, and we're required to do this.
It's mandatory.
It's mandatory.
Yes.
There you go.
All right, so thank you all. This has been a fabulous discussion, and yeah, make sure you connect with the accelerator and our account managers.
Nicely done.
You did a great job too. Thank you.